Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The French Quarter of New Orleans hummed under a crescent moon, its narrow streets alive with the scent of beignets and the distant wail of a saxophone. On the balcony of a suite at the Ritz-Carlton, Sarai Washington stood, her curly hair catching the breeze, her deep brown eyes reflecting the city's neon glow. The air was thick with jasmine and anticipation. Beside her, Henry Laurent leaned against the wrought-iron railing, his green eyes locked on her, intense and unguarded. His dark brown hair was slightly mussed, his tailored suit unbuttoned, revealing a hint of the man beneath the millionaire facade. "Sarai," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "I can't keep pretending this is just gratitude." She turned to him, her heart pounding. The charity gala downstairs had been a whirlwind. Glittering chandeliers, clinking champagne glasses, and whispers about the mystery woman on Henry's arm. Sarai's navy silk dress hugged her curves, a gift from Henry that made her feel both powerful and exposed. She'd caught every stare, every raised eyebrow, and now, alone with him, the weight of it all pressed against her chest. "Henry," she whispered, stepping closer, her breath catching. "If we do this, there's no going back." He closed the distance, his hand finding her waist, warm through the thin fabric. "I don't want to go back," he said, his lips hovering near hers. "I want the world to know you're mine." Before she could respond, he kissed her, deep and hungry, his fingers tracing the curve of her spine. Sarai melted into him, her hands gripping his shoulders, feeling the heat of his skin through his shirt. The city faded, the music, the lights, the judgment, until it was just then, tangled in a moment that felt like it could burn down the world. Her nails grazed his neck, and a soft moan escaped her lips. But then, fear surged. She pulled back, breathless, her eyes wide. "Henry," she said, voice shaky, "this changes everything." He smiled, a mix of longing and certainty. "Good. Let it." A week earlier, Sarai Washington was a different woman, one who hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. The French Quarter was less romantic then, its cobblestone streets slick with rain, its air heavy with the smell of spilled bourbon and fried shrimp. Sarai's sneakers were worn thin, her hoodie frayed at the cuffs. She hugged herself against the chill, her stomach growling so loud she pressed a hand to muffle it. She'd been scanning every storefront for a help-wanted sign, any chance at a fresh start. A cleaning gig, a waitress job, anything to get her off the streets. She knelt to tie her shoelace near a bustling cafe, the kind where tourists sipped chicory coffee and locals argued over jazz. That's when she saw it, a sleek black leather wallet lying in a puddle beside a wrought-iron lamppost. Her heart skipped. She picked it up, the leather smooth and heavy in her hands. The faint gold logo caught the light. Tom Ford. Sarai knew that name. This wasn't just any wallet. It was a status symbol, probably worth more than everything she'd owned in the last year. She opened it, her breath catching. Crisp $100 bills were neatly stacked, more money than she'd seen in years. There were credit cards, a driver's license, and a small photo of a boy with big eyes and a shy smile. Her fingers trembled. One bill could buy her a hot meal, gumbo maybe, with cornbread on the side. The whole stack could get her a room, clothes, a bus ticket out of this mess. But then her mother's voice echoed in her mind, steady as a hymn. "Honesty's what keeps your soul upright, Sarai." "Hey, church girl, you planning to keep that fancy wallet or what?" A deep voice rumbled behind her. Sarai spun around, clutching the wallet to her chest. Darius D. Jackson leaned against a brick wall, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He was all muscle and menace, 6'3", dreadlocks tied back, tattoos snaking up his arms. His leather jacket was scuffed, his boots worn, but his grin was pure mischief. Darius ran a small crew in the lower Ninth Ward, dealing in gray market goods, but Sarai knew him from way back when they sang in the same church choir as kids. "Mind your business, Dee," she snapped, rolling her eyes. "I'm not keeping it." He raised an eyebrow, blowing out smoke. "That's a Tom Ford, Sarai. Sell it, and we're eating po' boys for a year. Come on, live a little." She shot him a look that could have cut glass. "You know anything about doing the right thing, or you just here to mess with me?" Darius chuckled, tossing his cigarette. "Right thing, huh? Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. Rich folks don't play nice." He stepped closer, his voice softening. "You good, though? You look like you ain't eaten since Mardi Gras." "I'm fine," she lied, her stomach betraying her with another growl. She opened the wallet again, finding a business card. Henry Laurent, CEO, Laurent Properties. The address was in the Garden District, where mansions loomed like castles. She took a deep breath. "I'm taking this back." Darius shook his head. "Stubborn as ever. Want me to roll with you? Make sure nobody jumps you for that thing?" She smirked. "I can handle myself, Dee. But thanks." The Garden District was another world. Oak trees draped with Spanish moss shaded wide lawns, and iron gates guarded mansions that looked like they belonged in history books. Sarai felt small, her sneakers scuffing the pristine sidewalk as she approached the address on the card. The Laurent mansion was a beast: white columns, stained glass windows, and a fountain gurgling in the courtyard. The Tom Ford wallet felt heavier in her pocket, a reminder of the gap between her world and this one. She pressed the intercom at the gate, her throat dry. No response. She clapped her hands, hoping to get attention. A woman appeared, her silver hair pulled tight, her pearls gleaming. Margaret Laurent, Henry's mother, eyed Sarai like she was a stray dog. "What do you want?" Margaret asked, her voice sharp as a blade. "I need to see Mr. Henry Laurent," Sarai said, standing taller despite the sting of Margaret's gaze. "It's important." Margaret scoffed, crossing her arms. "Henry doesn't see people like you. If you're looking for handouts, try the shelter on Canal Street." Sarai's face burned, but she held her ground, clutching the wallet. "I'm not here for handouts. I have something of his, and if he finds out you turned me away, you'll be the one sorry." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "And what could you possibly have that matters to my son?" "That's between me and him," Sarai said, her voice steady. Before Margaret could respond, a man appeared behind the gate. Henry Laurent was tall, his navy suit tailored to perfection, his green eyes sharp but tired. His presence filled the space, commanding without effort. He glanced at Sarai, then at his mother. "What's going on?" "This woman claims she has something of yours," Margaret said, her tone dripping with disdain. Sarai pulled the wallet from her pocket and held it out. "I found this on Decatur Street this morning. It's yours, right?" Henry's eyes widened. He took the wallet, his fingers brushing hers briefly, sending a jolt through her. He opened it, checking the contents: money, cards, the photo of the boy. "It's all here," he said, almost to himself. "You didn't take anything?" "It's not mine," Sarai said simply. He studied her, his gaze piercing but not unkind. Her worn hoodie, her tired eyes, the way she stood defiant despite everything. It stirred something in him. "What's your name?" "Sarai Washington." "Why'd you come all this way, Sarai?" he asked, slipping the wallet into his pocket. She shrugged, her voice soft but firm. "Because it was the right thing. I wouldn't sleep knowing I kept something that wasn't mine." Henry nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He turned to the guard. "Open the gate." Margaret gasped. "Henry, you can't be serious." "She's coming in," he said, his tone final. To Sarai, he added, "You did me a huge favor. Least I can do is offer you coffee." Sarai hesitated. the weight of Margaret's stare heavy on her. But something in Henry's eyes, warmth maybe, or curiosity, made her step forward. The gate creaked open, and she entered a world she'd never imagined. Inside, the mansion was a cathedral of wealth. Marble floors gleamed, chandeliers sparkled, and the air smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers. Sarai sat stiffly on a velvet couch, clutching a steaming cup of coffee, feeling like an imposter. Henry sat across from her, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. "You live around here?" he asked, sipping his own coffee. Sarai stared into her cup, debating how much to reveal. "Not exactly. I've been between places for a while." Henry raised an eyebrow but didn't press. "You said you found the wallet on Decatur. That's a long walk to bring it back." She met his gaze, her voice steady. "I lost my job a while back. My mom passed and things fell apart. Rent, bills, you know how it goes. But I'm not a thief." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I didn't think you were. Most people would have kept that wallet, Sarai. Why didn't you?" She thought of her mother's hymns, the way she'd sing Amazing Grace through the worst days. "My mom always said honesty's worth more than money." I guess I believed her. Henry nodded, something shifting in his expression. "You've got a lot of guts, walking into this place. My mother's not exactly welcoming." Sarai smirked. "Yeah, I got that vibe." He laughed, a warm sound that eased the tension. "Listen, I've got a proposition. My son, Ethan, he's 6 and he's been through a lot since his mom passed. He needs someone with heart, someone he can trust. I think that's you." Sarai blinked, stunned. "You're offering me a job? You don't even know me." "I know you walked across town to return a Tom Ford wallet you could have sold for a small fortune," he said, his smile crooked. "That's enough for me." Before she could answer, a woman swept into the room, her blonde hair cascading in waves, her red dress hugging every curve. Vivienne Dubois was all glamour, her heels clicking like a warning. She stopped short, eyeing Sarai with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "Henry, darling," Vivienne purred, resting a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Who's your guest?" Henry stood, gently shrugging off her touch. "This is Sarai. She returned my wallet today. Sarai, this is Vivienne, a family friend." Vivienne's smile was sharp as a blade. "How charming. Found it on the street, did you? You must be quite the good Samaritan." Sarai held her gaze, unfazed. "Something like that. And you must be extra." Vivienne's eyes narrowed, but Henry coughed to hide a laugh. "Vivienne, we're just wrapping up. Sarai, think about the job. You'd have a place to stay, a salary, everything you need to start over." Sarai's chest tightened. A job, a home. It was more than she dared hope for, but the weight of Vivienne's stare, Margaret's contempt, and her own doubts made her pause. Could she belong in this world? "I'll think about it," she said finally, standing. "Thanks for the coffee." As she left, she felt Henry's eyes on her, steady and warm. Outside, Darius was waiting, leaning against a lamppost. "Told you rich folks are trouble," he said, grinning. "You good?" She nodded, but her mind was spinning. The Tom Ford wallet had opened a door she wasn't sure she could walk through. Back at the Ritz-Carlton, Sarai stood on the balcony, Henry's kiss still burning on her lips. The city stretched out below, a maze of lights and secrets. She'd taken the job, moved into the mansion, and now, a week later, she was here, caught in a moment that could change her life. Henry stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. She laughed, shaky. "Not even close? Us, it's a lot." He nodded, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. "I know. But I meant what I said, Sarai. I'm not letting you go. Letting you. She looked into his eyes, seeing the man behind the money, the father who'd do anything for his son, the widower who'd forgotten how to feel until now. Her heart said yes, but her head screamed caution. She stepped back, forcing a smile. "We'll see, Mr. Millionaire," she said, her voice teasing. "But you've got to earn me first." He grinned, undeterred. Challenge accepted. What do you think Sarai will do next? Will she follow her heart or let fear hold her back? That Tom Ford wallet opened a whole new world, but can she handle the drama that comes with it? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell to catch the next part of this wild love story. Don't miss out. The dining room at Commander's Palace was a vision of old New Orleans elegance. Turquoise walls, white tablecloths, and chandeliers casting a golden glow over plates of crawfish, etouffee, and blackened redfish. Sarai Washington sat at a corner table, her navy silk dress feeling like a borrowed skin. She'd borrowed it from Mrs. Delphine, the Laurent family's Creole housekeeper, who'd insisted, "Child, you gotta shine in a place like this." Sarai wasn't so sure. The clink of crystal glasses and the murmurs of the city's elite made her feel like an outsider, even with Henry Laurent sitting across from her, his green eyes warm and steady. Ethan, Henry's 6-year-old son, sat beside her, his small hands clutching a crayon as he drew a lopsided spaceship on the kid's menu. "Sarai, you think rockets can fly to the moon and Mars?" he asked, his voice bright. She grinned, leaning down. "Only if they've got a pilot as brave as you, kiddo." Henry chuckled, his tailored blazer open, revealing a crisp white shirt that hugged his frame. "You're good with him," he said, his voice low, like he was sharing a secret. "Better than any nanny we've had." Sarai's cheeks warmed, but before she could respond, a shadow fell over the table. Vivienne Dubois glided up, her sequined gold dress catching every light in the room. Her blonde waves bounced, and her red lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Henry, darling," she purred, resting a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Fancy seeing you here. And who's this?" Henry shifted, his jaw tightening. "Vivienne, you remember Sarai. She's working with Ethan now." Vivian's gaze slid to Sarai, sharp as a switchblade. "Oh, right. The Good Samaritan who found your Tom Ford wallet. How quaint." She tilted her head, her voice dripping with honeyed venom. "What did you do before that, Sarai? Waitress or something less glamorous?" The table went quiet. Ethan looked up, confused, his crayon pausing. Sarai's stomach twisted, but she met Vivian's eyes, her voice steady. "I survived, Vivian. What do you do besides throw shade and chase rich guys?" A few nearby diners stifled laughs, and Henry coughed, hiding a grin. Vivian's smile faltered, but she recovered, leaning closer to Henry. "Well, I'm sure you're grateful for her, Henry. But you know, some people might think she's after more than a paycheck." "That's enough," Henry said, his tone sharp. "Sarai's here because she's family to Ethan, and to me." Vivian straightened, her eyes narrowing. "Family? Oh, how progressive." She turned to Sarai, her voice low. "Enjoy the spotlight, sweetheart. It doesn't last." With a flip of her hair, she sauntered back to her table where a group of socialites whispered behind their wine glasses. Sarai exhaled, her hands trembling under the table. Ethan tugged her sleeve. "Why's that lady so mean?" "She's just extra," Sarai said, forcing a smile. "Don't worry, buddy. Let's finish that spaceship." Henry reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "You okay?" She nodded, but the weight of Vivian's words lingered. Family? She'd only been at the Laurent mansion a week, sleeping in a guest room that felt like a palace, with its 4-poster bed and jasmine-scented sheets. She was still getting used to eating 3 meals a day, to Ethan's shy smiles, to Henry's quiet intensity. But Vivian wasn't wrong. People were watching, judging, assuming she was a gold digger who'd lucked into a rich man's wallet. Later that night, back at the mansion in the Garden District, Sarai stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of gumbo she'd made from her mom's recipe. The air smelled of rue and cayenne, a comfort that grounded her. Mrs. Delphine, her gray braids tucked under a scarf, chopped okra nearby, humming a Creole lullaby. "You held your own tonight, child," Delphine said, her voice warm. "That Vivian's got claws, but you've got fire." Sarai laughed, but it was strained. "I don't know, Delphine. Places like Commander's Palace, people like Vivian, they make me feel like I don't belong." Delphine set down her knife, her eyes sharp. "Belong? Girl, you belong anywhere you choose to stand. You brought that boy back to life, and you got Henry smiling again. That's more than any of those high society types can claim." Sarai stirred the gumbo, her thoughts churning. Ethan had started talking more since she arrived, his laughter filling the mansion's halls. Henry, too, seemed lighter, lingering in the kitchen to chat, his gaze lingering a little too long. But the whispers at the restaurant, the way Henry Laurent had glared from across the room, it all reminded her how far she was from this world. Her phone buzzed, shattering her thoughts. The screen showed a name that made her heart sink. Jasmine. Her younger sister's voice was slurred when Sarai answered. "Sis, I messed up. I need you. Please." Sarai's grip tightened on the phone. "Where are you, Jazz?" "Lower Ninth. My place. I can't do this alone." Delphine caught Sarai's expression and nodded. "Go. I'll finish the gumbo. Family comes first." The lower Ninth Ward was a different New Orleans, far from the glitter of the French Quarter or the mansions of the Garden District. Wooden houses sagged under years of neglect, their paint peeling like old skin. Kids played basketball in the street, their laughter mixing with the hum of cicadas and the occasional bark of a stray dog. Sarai stepped out of a cab, her sneakers crunching on gravel, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and barbecue smoke. Jasmine's apartment was a cramped one-bedroom above a corner store, its stairs creaking under Sarai's weight. Inside, her sister sat on a sagging couch, her braids messy, her eyes red from crying, or worse. Jasmine was only 22, a jazz singer with a voice like velvet, but addiction had stolen her spark. "Jazz," Sarai said, kneeling beside her. "What happened?" "I tried, Sarai," Jasmine mumbled, her voice breaking. "I was clean for a month, but it's too hard. I'm sorry." Sarai's chest ached. She'd spent years keeping Jasmine afloat after their mom died, working double shifts, selling homemade pralines on the street. But it was never enough. "You don't have to do this alone," she said, squeezing her sister's hand. "We'll get you help." The door swung open, and Darius D. Jackson stepped in, his leather jacket glistening with rain. His presence filled the room, all muscle and menace, but his eyes softened when he saw Sarai. "Heard Jazz was in trouble," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Figured you'd need backup." Sarai stood, grateful but wary. "You didn't have to come, Dee." "Like I'm gonna let you deal with this solo," he said, crossing his arms. "Come on, church girl. Let's get her to a clinic. I know a place that'll take her tonight." Together, they helped Jasmine to Darius's beat-up Chevy, the leather seats cracked but clean. The drive to the rehab center was quiet, save for Jasmine's soft sobs and the patter of rain on the windshield. Sarai stared out the window, the city blurring into streaks of light. She thought of Henry, of Ethan's crayon drawings, of the gumbo waiting back at the mansion. Could she balance this, her sister's chaos, her own past, with the life Henry was offering? At the clinic, A nurse took Jasmine inside, promising to call with updates. Sarai leaned against the car, exhausted. Darius lit a cigarette, the glow illuminating his tattoos. "You don't need that rich boy, Sarai," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You're a queen out here. Always have been." She met his gaze, seeing the boy who'd once shared his lunch with her in church, the man who'd always had her back. "I know, Dee," she said, "but my heart's saying something else, and I gotta listen." He nodded, blowing out smoke. "Fair enough. But if he hurts you, I'm wrecking that fancy mansion of his." She laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "Deal." The next evening, Sarai stood outside Preservation Hall, a legendary jazz venue in the French Quarter. The wooden facade was weathered, but inside the air buzzed with life, trumpets wailing, drums thumping, and the crowd swaying to the rhythm. Henry had invited her, a thank you for helping Ethan open up. She'd hesitated, still rattled from Jasmine's relapse and Vivian's venom, but Mrs. Delphine had pushed her out the door. "Go, child. Live a little." Henry was waiting by the entrance, his blazer swapped for a fitted black sweater that made him look less like a CEO and more like someone she could touch. His green eyes lit up when he saw her, her simple black dress hugging her curves, her curls loose and wild. "You came," he said, his smile boyish. "Told you I'd think about it," she teased, brushing past him into the dim hall. The music was electric, a sultry rendition of Basin Street blues that made Sarai's hips sway unconsciously. She caught Henry watching, his gaze intense, and her pulse quickened. They found a spot near the stage, their shoulders brushing in the packed crowd. The heat of his arm against hers sent a shiver through her, and when the band shifted to a slow, soulful number, she couldn't help but sing along, her voice low and rich. Henry leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "You sing better than half the folks up there." She laughed, nudging him. "Don't start, Mr. Millionaire. I know you're just trying to score points." "Maybe," he admitted, his hand grazing hers. "But you make everything brighter, Sarai. This place, me, everything." Her breath caught, the music fading as his words sank in, his fingers laced with hers, a quiet claim that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Under the dim lights, with the saxophones moaning, she felt the pull of him, his warmth, his certainty, the way he saw her, not the homeless woman who'd found his Tom Ford wallet. "Henry," she said, her voice barely audible, "you're making this hard." "Good," he murmured, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. "I don't want it to be easy." The moment stretched, heavy with possibility. She could have kissed him right there, let the music and the heat carry her away. But fear, of Vivian's warnings, of her own past, held her back. She pulled her hand away, forcing a smile. "Slow down, Laurent. I'm not that easy to win." He grinned, undeterred. Challenge accepted. Back at the mansion, Sarai couldn't sleep. She sat on her guest room's balcony, the night air thick with jasmine and the distant hum of the city. Her phone buzzed, a text from Darius. "Jazz is settled. You good?" She typed back, "I'm trying. Thanks, Dee." But good wasn't the word. She was caught between worlds, Jasmine's struggles, Ethan's growing trust, Henry's pull, and Vivian's scheming. She thought of the Tom Ford wallet, now back in Henry's possession, a sleek symbol of the life he lived. Returning it had been the right thing, but it had also dropped her into a storm she wasn't sure she could weather. Vivian's words echoed, "Enjoy the spotlight. It doesn't last." Sarai hugged her knees, her mom's voice whispering through the doubt. "Honesty's what keeps you upright, Sarai." But what did honesty mean when her heart was tugging her toward a man whose world might never accept her? And what about Jasmine, Darius, the life she'd always known? As the stars blinked above, Sarai felt the cracks forming, not just in her resolve, but in the dream she'd started to believe in. The Ernest N. Memorial Convention Center glittered like a jewel on the Mississippi River, its glass walls reflecting the neon pulse of New Orleans. Inside, the charity gala was in full swing, marble floors gleaming under chandeliers, waiters weaving through crowds with trays of shrimp remoulade and Sazerac cocktails. Sarai Washington stood near a towering floral arrangement, her emerald green gown shimmering under the lights. The dress, a loan from Mrs. Delphine, hugged her curves and made her feel like she could hold her own, even in a room full of the city's elite. But the whispers followed her, sharp as thorns. Who's that with Henry Laurent? Some girl who found his wallet, they say. She's not one of us. Henry stood beside her, his black tuxedo sharp, his green eyes scanning the room with quiet confidence. Ethan, in a tiny bow tie, clung to Sarai's hand, his eyes wide at the spectacle. "Sarai, can we get more of those shrimp things?" he asked, tugging her sleeve. She laughed, bending down. "Only if you say, 'Pretty please' first, kiddo." "Pretty please," he chirped, flashing a grin that melted her heart. Henry caught her eye, his smile soft. "You're a natural with him. I haven't seen him this happy in years." Sarai's chest warmed, but before she could respond, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host, Henry Laurent, for a special announcement." Henry squeezed her hand, a fleeting touch that sent a spark through her. "Be right back," he said, striding to the stage. The crowd hushed as he took the mic, his presence commanding. "Thank you all for being here," Henry began, his voice steady. "This gala supports housing for families in need, a cause close to my heart. But tonight, I want to acknowledge someone who's made a difference in my family's life." His eyes found Sarai's, and her breath caught. Sarai Washington returned something I'd lost. A Tom Ford wallet, worth more than most would ever see. But more than that, she brought light back to my son, Ethan, and to me. She's not just a guest tonight. She's family. The room erupted in polite applause, but Sarai felt the air shift. Eyes turned to her, some curious, others cold. Vivienne Dubois, draped in a silver gown that screamed money, stood near the bar, her red lips pursed. Margaret Laurent, Henry's mother, sat at a VIP table, her pearls glinting as she whispered to a friend, her expression icy. Sarai's skin prickled. Family? The word felt like a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. As Henry returned, Vivienne glided over, her smile sharp. "What a speech, Henry," she said, ignoring Sarai. "You always know how to make a statement, though some might say it's bold, parading your help in front of everyone." Henry's jaw tightened. "Sarai's not the help, Vivienne. She's more than you'll ever understand." Vivienne's eyes flicked to Sarai, venomous. "Oh, I understand perfectly. Enjoy your moment, sweetheart. It won't last." She sauntered off, her heels clicking like a countdown. Ethan tugged Sarai's hand. "Why's that lady always so grumpy?" Sarai forced a smile, her stomach churning. "She's just got bad vibes, buddy. Don't worry." But worry gnawed at her. By the next morning, the whispers had turned into a storm. A local gossip blog posted an article. "Henry Laurent's mystery woman, gold digger, or good Samaritan?" The piece mentioned the Tom Ford wallet, twisting Sarai's act of honesty into a calculated move to snag a millionaire. Vivienne's fingerprints were all over it. She'd been seen lunching with the blog's editor the day before. Sarai read the article on her phone in the mansion's kitchen, her hands shaking as Mrs. Delphine stirred a pot of red beans and rice. "They're vultures, child," Delphine said, her voice firm. "Don't let 'em get under your skin." But they did. Sarai felt exposed, her past, homelessness, scraping by, losing her mom, laid bare for strangers to judge. She thought of Jasmine, her sister, still fighting addiction in a rehab center. She thought of Darius, who'd told her she didn't need Henry's world, and she thought of Ethan, whose laughter had become her anchor. Could she stay, knowing she'd always be the outsider? She found Henry in his study, surrounded by oak bookshelves and the faint scent of leather. He was reading the article, his face dark. "Sarai," he said, standing. "I'm sorry. I didn't think—" "It's not your fault," she cut in, her voice tight. "But it's too much. They think I'm after your money, your name. I can't live like that." He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I don't care what they think. I care about you, about us." "Us?" She laughed, bitter. "Henry, there's no us if I'm just the girl who found your fancy wallet. I'm not one of them, and I never will be." "You think I want you to be?" he said, his voice low, urgent. "I want you, Sarai. Your heart, your fire, the way you make Ethan laugh. Screw the gossip." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "It's not just gossip. It's your world. Your mom, Vivian, those people at the gala. They'll never let me in. And I won't be your charity case." "You're not," he started, but she held up a hand. "I need to go," she said, her voice breaking. "For Ethan, for you, for me." She left a note on his desk, her handwriting shaky. "Henry, thank you for everything. You gave me hope, but I can't be your burden. Take care of Ethan." "Sarai." She slipped out before he could stop her, the mansion's grandeur fading behind her. Henry needed air, space, something to clear the fog in his head. He packed a bag, bundled Ethan into his Range Rover, and drove 5 hours to a family retreat in Savannah, Georgia. The estate was a sprawling, low-country mansion, its white columns framed by ancient oaks dripping with Spanish moss. A wraparound porch overlooked a tidal creek where egrets skimmed the water, and the air smelled of salt and cedar. Ethan ran to the porch swing, his sneakers kicking up dust, while Henry stood by the creek, Sarai's note crumpled in his pocket. He'd read it a dozen times, each word a knife. He'd meant every word at the gala. She was family. But he hadn't seen how his world, with its sharp edges and sharper tongues, would cut her. He thought of the Tom Ford wallet, still in his desk drawer, a sleek reminder of the moment she'd walked into his life. Returning it had been her choice, but staying, that was his to fight for. Ethan's voice broke his thoughts. "Dad, look!" The boy sat cross-legged on the grass, sketching with crayons. Henry knelt beside him, his heart twisting at the drawing. A house under a starry sky, with 3 stick figures holding hands. Him, Ethan, and a woman with curly hair. "Is that Sarai?" Henry asked, his voice thick. Ethan nodded, his eyes serious. "I don't want a new mom, Dad. I want Sarai. She sings better than Mom did, and she makes funny faces when she eats gumbo." Henry laughed, but it hurt. Olivia, his late wife, had been gone 3 years, her absence a shadow over them both. Sarai hadn't replaced her. She'd brought new light, new life. Ethan's words crystallized what Henry already knew. He couldn't let her go. "We'll get her back, buddy," he said, ruffling Ethan's hair. "Promise." That night, Ethan tried to help by making coffee, dumping grounds all over the kitchen counter. "Dad, I think Sarai's better at this," he said, giggling as Henry groaned. "You're gonna bankrupt me with this mess, kid," Henry said, grabbing a broom. But he smiled, the first real one since Sarai left. Ethan was right. Sarai was better at this, at everything. He had to find her. Meanwhile, Sarai was back in the lower 9th Ward, where the air smelled of fried catfish and motor oil, and the streets hummed with life. She'd crashed on a friend's couch, unable to face the rehab center where Jasmine was fighting her demons. The gossip blog's sting lingered, but it was her own doubts that cut deeper. She'd started to believe in Henry, in a future with him and Ethan. But Vivian's words, "It won't last," echoed like a curse. Darius found her at a hole-in-the-wall bar, its neon sign buzzing live jazz tonight. The place was cramped, with sticky tables and a piano player pounding out "When the Saints Go Marching In." Sarai sat in a corner, nursing a ginger ale, her curls pulled into a messy bun. "You look like you lost a fight with a hurricane," Darius said, sliding into the booth. His leather jacket creaked, his tattoos peeking out from his sleeves. "Thanks for the compliment," she said, rolling her eyes. "What are you doing here, Dee?" "Heard you bailed on the rich boy," he said, leaning back. "Figured you'd need a friend, or at least a drink." She sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I didn't bail. I just couldn't stay. They think I'm after his money, his name. I'm not that girl." Darius snorted. "You think I don't know that? You're the one who gave back a Tom Ford wallet when you were starving. You're real, Sarai. That's why I—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. She looked at him, her heart heavy. "Why you what?" He leaned forward, his voice low. "I love you, Sarai. Always have. But I know you don't feel the same. Your heart's with that Laurent guy, and I ain't gonna stand in the way. Just don't let this world scare you off. You're stronger than that." Tears pricked her eyes. Darius had been her rock, the boy who'd shared his sandwiches, the man who'd pulled her out of countless storms. She reached for his hand. "Your family, Dee. Always will be." He squeezed her hand, then stood. "Come on, church girl. They got a mic up there. Sing something. Make this dump feel holy." She laughed, wiping her eyes. The bar's stage was a rickety platform, but when she took the mic, the room hushed. She sang Amazing Grace, her voice rising, rich and raw, carrying years of pain and hope. The crowd swayed, some closing their eyes, others raising their drinks. Darius watched from the back, his smile proud but bittersweet. In Savannah, Henry sat on the porch, the creek glittering under the moon. Ethan slept inside, his crayon drawing tucked under his pillow. Henry pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Delphine, his voice low. "Any word on Sarai?" "She's in the lower ninth, helping her sister," Delphine said. "That girl's got a heart bigger than this city, but she's scared. Thinks she'll ruin you." Henry's grip tightened. "She's not ruining me. She's saving me." "Then go get her," Delphine said, her tone sharp. "But you better mean it, Henry. She ain't one of your boardroom deals." He hung up, his mind made up. Sarai had returned his wallet, his son's smile, his own heart. Now it was his turn to fight for her. He'd go back to New Orleans, face the gossip, his mother, Vivian, whatever it took. Because Sarai Washington wasn't just a woman who'd found a Tom Ford wallet. She was the woman he loved. The spotted cat was a pulsing heart in the French Quarter, its neon sign flickering over a crowd spilling onto the sidewalk. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of bourbon, sweat, and cigarette smoke. The stage alive with a trumpeter's wail and a drummer's relentless beat. Sarai Washington sat at a corner table, her ginger ale untouched, her curls pulled into a loose bun. The lower Ninth Ward felt like home, but tonight it was a refuge, a place to hide from the gossip, the doubts, and the ache in her chest where Henry Laurent's name lived. She'd been back a week, crashing on a friend's couch, checking on Jasmine at the rehab center, and dodging Darius's knowing looks. The gossip blog's venom still stung. Gold digger or good Samaritan? Its words twisting her act of returning Henry's Tom Ford wallet into something sordid. Every glance from a stranger felt like judgment. Every whisper a reminder that she didn't belong in Henry's world. But the worst part? She missed him. Missed Ethan's giggles, Henry's quiet intensity, the way his hand had felt in hers at Preservation Hall. The bar door swung open, and Vivienne Dubois strutted in, a vision in a black leather dress that hugged every curve. Her blonde waves bounced, her red lips curled in a smirk. Sarai's stomach dropped. Vivienne didn't belong here. This was Sarai's turf, not some high society playground. Vivienne scanned the room, her eyes locking on Sarai like a hawk spotting prey. She sauntered over, heels clicking, and slid into the seat across from her. "Well, well," Vivienne purred, crossing her legs. "Hiding out in the slums, are we? I thought you'd be at Henry's mansion, playing house." Sarai leaned back, her voice cool. "What do you want, Vivienne? This ain't your scene." Vivienne laughed, sharp and brittle. "Oh, I'm just checking on you. Word is you ran back to your roots after that little blog post. Smart move. Henry's better off without the baggage." Sarai's fingers tightened around her glass. "You wrote that garbage, didn't you? Stirring up drama to make me look like a gold digger." Vivienne shrugged, inspecting her nails. "I didn't write it, darling. I just spilled a little tea to the right people. You're out of your league, Sarai. Henry needs someone who fits. Someone like me." Before Sarai could fire back, a shadow loomed over the table. Darius D. Jackson stood there, his leather jacket creaking, his tattoos glinting under the bar's red lights. His eyes were hard, his voice a low growl. "You lost, Blondie. This ain't your kind of party." Vivienne flinched, but held her ground, her smile tight. "And you must be the local thug. Charming. I'm just having a chat with your friend." Darius leaned down, his face inches from hers. "Chat's over. You mess with Sarai again, and I'll make sure you regret it. We clear?" Vivienne's bravado cracked, her eyes darting to the exit. She stood, smoothing her dress. "You're both pathetic," she hissed, then strode out, leaving a trail of perfume and tension. Sarai exhaled, her hands shaking. "Thanks, Dee, but I can handle her." He slid into the seat Vivienne had vacated, his grin crooked. "I know you can, church girl, but I ain't letting that snake slither around you. She's trouble." Sarai nodded, her mind racing. Vivienne's visit wasn't random. She was up to something, and Sarai had a sinking feeling it involved Henry. That night, Vivienne's plan unfolded at the Spotted Cat. She'd paid a lowlife to stage a mugging outside the bar, timing it so Henry, whom she'd invited under the pretense of a charity meeting, would see her in distress and play the hero. She'd even tipped off a paparazzo to catch the moment, hoping to spark jealousy in Sarai and headlines for herself. But she hadn't counted on Darius. As Vivienne stepped outside, fake tears ready, the hired thug grabbed her purse. She screamed, right on cue, but before Henry could even arrive, Darius was there, his fist connecting with the thug's jaw. The guy hit the pavement groaning, and Darius snatched the purse, tossing it back to Vivienne with a glare. "Nice try, princess. Next time, hire someone who can take a punch." Vivienne's face paled, her plan crumbling. The paparazzo snapped a few useless shots before fleeing, and Henry, pulling up in his Range Rover, saw only Darius standing over a dazed thug. "What the hell's going on?" he demanded, stepping out. Vivienne stammered, clutching her purse. I was attacked. This man saved me." Darius snorted, crossing his arms. "Saved you from your own dumb scheme. Tell your boy the truth, or I will." Henry's eyes narrowed, flicking between Vivienne and Darius. "Vivienne, what's he talking about?" She laughed, high-pitched and nervous. "Nothing. He's just some thug, Henry. Let's go inside." "Enough," Henry snapped, his voice like steel. "I'm done with your games. Stay away from me and stay away from Sarai." Vivienne's mouth opened, but no words came. She turned and fled, her heels wobbling on the cobblestones. Henry turned to Darius, his expression wary. "You're a friend of Sarai's?" Darius nodded, sizing him up. "Yeah, And you're the guy who's got her all twisted up. Hurt her, and you'll answer to me." Henry met his gaze, unflinching. "I'd rather die than hurt her." Darius grunted, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "We'll see, rich boy." He walked off, leaving Henry alone under the flickering neon. Sarai didn't know about the bar incident until the next morning, when a new article hit the gossip blogs. Henry Laurent's charity queen or con artist, the truth behind the Tom Ford wallet. The piece was vicious, painting Sarai as a schemer who'd used the wallet to worm her way into Henry's life. It quoted anonymous sources close to the Laurent family. Vivienne's doing, no doubt, with Margaret's blessing. Sarai read it in the lower Ninth Ward, sitting on her friend's sagging porch, the air heavy with the smell of fried okra and motor oil. Her hands shook, rage and shame warring inside her. She'd returned that damn wallet because it was right, not to chase some fairy tale. But now her name was dragged through the mud, her past, homelessness, scraping by, twisted into proof of her greed. She thought of Ethan, his crayon drawings, his trust. She thought of Henry, his hand in hers, his voice calling her family. Could she go back, knowing this was the cost? She caught a bus to the Garden District, her heart pounding as she approached the Laurent mansion. The oak trees cast long shadows, the fountain gurgling like a mocking laugh. She didn't ring the bell. She couldn't face Margaret's sneer. Instead, she slipped through a side gate, a trick Ethan had shown her, and found Henry in the mansion's library. The room smelled of old books and polished wood, its shelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a single lamp casting a golden glow. Henry stood by a window, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair mussed. He turned, his eyes lighting up. "Sarai," he breathed, crossing the room. "You're here." She held up a hand, stopping him. "I saw the article, Henry. They're calling me a con artist, saying I played you with that wallet. Your mom's probably throwing a party right now." His face darkened. "It's Vivienne. She's behind it, and my mother's eating it up. But I don't care what they say. I care," she snapped, her voice breaking. "I can't live like this, Henry. Every time I step into your world, someone's waiting to tear me down. I'm not your charity case, and I'm not your scandal." "You're not either of those," he said, stepping closer, his voice low and fierce. "You're the woman who brought my son back to me. The woman I—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. Sarai's breath hitched. "Don't say it, not now." But he did, his hands cupping her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. "I love you, Sarai, and I'm not letting you go because of some gossip rag." The words hit like a wave, unraveling her. She wanted to believe him, to fall into the promise of his touch. Instead, she stepped back, tears spilling. "I love you too," she whispered. "But I need to know who I am in this world. And right now, I don't." Before he could stop her, she turned and ran, the library's warmth fading behind her. The St. Louis Cathedral stood like a sentinel in the heart of New Orleans, its white facade glowing under the midday sun, its spires piercing a sky streaked with clouds. Inside, the air was cool and heavy with the scent of candle wax and old wood, the stained glass windows casting rainbows across the pews. Sarai Washington stood with the church choir, her voice rising in a gospel rendition of Amazing Grace that filled the vaulted ceiling. Her curls were loose, her simple white blouse and jeans, a stark contrast to the emerald gown she'd worn at the gala. Singing was her refuge, a tether to her mother's memory, to the girl she'd been before the world tried to break her. She'd been back in the lower Ninth Ward for 2 weeks, dodging the gossip blogs and their venomous lies about her gold-digging scheme with Henry Laurent's Tom Ford wallet. The words still stung, but she'd found a rhythm, visiting Jasmine at rehab, crashing on a friend's couch, and singing with the choir to keep her heart steady. Yet every note carried an ache, a longing for Ethan's laughter, for Henry's quiet strength. She'd run from his world, from the judgment and the weight of being his charity case, but running hadn't erased him from her soul. As the choir's voices faded, a figure slipped into the back pew. Henry Laurent, in a navy sweater and jeans, looked less like a millionaire and more like a man carrying a weight. His green eyes locked on Sarai, intense and unyielding. She froze, her heart pounding. He shouldn't be here. This was her sanctuary, not his. The choir director called a break, and Sarai stepped outside, the humid air hitting her like a wave. Henry followed, his steps quiet but deliberate. They stood in Jackson Square, surrounded by street artists and the chatter of tourists, the cathedral's shadow stretching over them. "Sarai," he said, his voice low, raw. "I've been looking for you." She crossed her arms, her voice guarded. "You shouldn't be here, Henry. I told you. I need space." "I know," he said, stepping closer, his eyes searching hers. "But I can't let you go without a fight, not after what Delphine told me." Sarai's brow furrowed. "Delphine?" Henry nodded, his hands in his pockets, as if to keep from reaching for her. "She told me you turned down money from Darius, enough to set you and Jasmine up for years. You could have taken it, walked away, but you didn't. You're not after anyone's wallet, Sarai, least of all mine. You're the most honest person I've ever met, and I was a fool not to see it sooner." Her throat tightened, tears pricking her eyes. She'd refused Darius' offer because it felt like giving up, like admitting she couldn't stand on her own. But hearing Henry say it, seeing the way he looked at her, like she was everything, shook her resolve. "That doesn't change anything," she said, her voice trembling. "Your world, your mom, Vivian. They'll never let me be anything but the girl who found your Tom Ford wallet." "Then I'll change my world," he said, his voice fierce. "I don't care about their rules. I care about you, about Ethan, about us." She shook her head, stepping back. "It's not that simple, Henry. I don't even know who I am anymore." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "You're Sarai Washington, the woman who gave me back my son's smile, the woman I love." The words hit like a thunderclap, stealing her breath. She wanted to run, to hide, but his hand anchored her, and before she could respond, a street performer nearby launched into a jazzy trumpet solo, the notes swirling around them like a spell. Sarai laughed despite herself, the tension breaking. "You pick the worst times to get all romantic, Laurent." He grinned, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Gotta keep you on your toes, Washington." That afternoon, Sarai walked through City Park, needing air to clear her head. The park was a sprawl of ancient oaks, their branches dripping with Spanish moss, the lagoons reflecting a sky bruised with storm clouds. Families picnicked on the grass, kids chased dragonflies, and the air smelled of damp earth and magnolias. Sarai sat by a lagoon, her sneakers dangling over the water, her mind a tangle of Henry's words and her own fears. She'd seen Jasmine that morning, her sister's eyes clearer, her voice stronger. "I'm trying, Sarai," Jasmine had said, clutching her hand. "You don't have to save me anymore. Go live your life." The words had freed something in Sarai, but they also terrified her. Living her life meant facing Henry, his world, the love she'd tried to bury. A rumble of thunder rolled in, and rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavy. Sarai stood, ready to run for cover, but a voice stopped her. "Sarai." She turned, her heart leaping. Henry jogged toward her, his sweater soaked, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked ridiculous and perfect, his green eyes blazing with determination. "You're not getting rid of me that easy," he called, his voice cutting through the rain. She laughed, wiping water from her face. "You're crazy, you know that?" "Crazy about you," he said, reaching her. The rain poured, drenching them both, but he didn't care. He dropped to one knee, right there in the mud, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Sarai's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple silver ring with a single diamond, sparkling even in the storm. "Sarai Washington," he said, his voice steady despite the rain. "You walked into my life with nothing but a lost wallet and a heart bigger than this city. You gave me back my son, my hope, myself. I don't want you to fit my world. I want to build a new one with you. Marry me, Sarai. Not as my employee, not as a story in some gossip rag, but as my partner, my love, my home." Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear the thunder. She'd spent so long running, from her past, from judgment, from love. But Henry, kneeling in the mud, offering her a future, was a truth she couldn't deny. She loved him, fiercely, completely, and she was done being afraid. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, Henry." He surged to his feet, pulling her into his arms, and kissed her, deep and desperate, the rain soaking them to the bone. Her hands tangled in his hair, his arms tight around her waist, and for a moment, the world was just them. Two people choosing each other against all odds. The diamond on her finger caught a flash of lightning, a tiny beacon in the storm. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and laughing, Henry pressed his forehead to hers. "You're my home, Sarai." "And you're mine," she said, her voice soft but sure. Across town, Darius D. Jackson leaned against a lamppost in the French Quarter, the rain soaking his leather jacket. He'd followed Sarai to City Park, needing to know she was okay. When he saw Henry propose, saw her say yes, something in him broke and healed. He'd loved her since they were kids, but her heart had always been her own. Seeing her happy, even with someone else, was enough. He lit a cigarette, the glow flickering in the downpour. "You got this, church girl," he muttered, a sad smile tugging at his lips. He turned and walked away, his boots splashing through puddles, knowing he'd always be there if she needed him. At the Laurent mansion, Vivienne Dubois was unraveling. Her latest scheme, the fake mugging, the gossip article, had backfired. Henry had cut her off, and Margaret, his mother, was starting to waver. Ethan's joy around Sarai was undeniable, his laughter echoing through the halls in a way it hadn't since Olivia's death. Margaret sat in her parlor, her pearls clutched tightly, reading a letter from Henry. "Sarai's the one, Mother. Accept her, or lose us both." Vivian stormed in, her silver heels clicking. "You're not seriously letting this happen, Margaret. That girl's a nobody." Margaret sighed, her voice weary. "She's not a nobody to my grandson, or my son. You've lost, Vivian. Go home." Vivian's face twisted, but she had no cards left to play. She left the mansion, her dreams of winning Henry's name and fortune dissolving in the rain. Back at City Park, Sarai and Henry found shelter under an oak, the rain slowing to a drizzle. Ethan's face flashed in Sarai's mind, and she smiled. "We've got to tell Ethan," she said, her voice warm. "He's gonna lose it." Henry laughed, pulling her close. "He'll probably demand to be ring-bearer." They stood there, wrapped in each other, the lagoon reflecting the clearing sky. Sarai thought of the Tom Ford wallet, that sleek piece of leather that had brought her to this moment. Returning it had been about honesty, but saying yes to Henry was about courage, courage to love, to fight, to build a life together. The next morning, Henry sat Ethan down in the mansion's kitchen, Sarai beside him. Ethan's eyes widened at the ring on her finger. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" he asked, his voice small but hopeful. Sarai knelt, hugging him tight. "Forever, kiddo. You're stuck with me." Ethan grinned, throwing his arms around her. "Good, 'cause you make the best gumbo." Henry laughed, but his eyes were misty. "You're gonna make me look bad, buddy." Later, as Ethan ran off to draw a wedding picture, Henry pulled Sarai into the hallway, his hands framing her face. "We're doing this," he said, his voice a mix of awe and determination. "You, me, Ethan, a family." She nodded, her heart full. A family. But as they stood there, the world outside loomed. Margaret's reluctant acceptance, Vivian's lingering shadow, the city's watchful eyes. Sarai knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Henry's hand in hers, she was ready to face it. The St. Louis Cathedral glowed under a late afternoon sun, its white spires reaching for a sky painted with streaks of pink and gold. Inside, the air was warm with the scent of jasmine and candle wax, the stained glass windows casting a mosaic of light across the pews. Sarai Washington stood at the altar, her ivory lace dress shimmering, its train trailing like a whisper of her past. Her curls were swept up, a few tendrils framing her face, and her deep brown eyes sparkled with a mix of nerves and joy. The choir's gospel rendition of "O Happy Day" filled the cathedral, the notes soaring as if carrying her heart to the heavens. Henry Laurent stood opposite her, his black tuxedo tailored to perfection, his green eyes locked on her with a love that felt like a vow before the words were even spoken. Ethan, 6 years old and beaming in a miniature tux, stood between them, clutching the ring pillow like it was his most important mission. The pews were filled with a mix of faces, Mrs. Delphine's warm smile, Jasmine's tearful pride, a few of Henry's business associates, and, to Sarai's surprise, Margaret Laurent, her expression softened, if not fully warm. The pastor, a gray-haired man with a voice like velvet, spoke of love's endurance, of two souls finding each other against the odds. Sarai barely heard him, her focus on Henry, on the man who'd knelt in the rain to offer her a future. She thought of the Tom Ford wallet, that sleek piece of leather she'd found in a French Quarter puddle, the spark that had led her here. Returning it had been about honesty. Standing here now was about courage. "Do you, Sarai Washington," the pastor said, "take Henry Laurent to be your husband, to love and cherish in all the days of your life?" Her voice was steady, her heart full. "I do. And do you, Henry Laurent, take Sarai Washington to be your wife, to love and cherish in all the days of your life?" Henry's smile was radiant, his voice a promise. "I do." Ethan bounced on his toes, nearly dropping the rings. "Can I give him the rings now?" he whispered loudly, drawing laughter from the crowd. Sarai knelt, cupping his face. "Go for it, kiddo." He handed the rings with exaggerated care, and as Henry slipped the diamond band onto Sarai's finger, she felt a weight lift. This was real. Her family, her home, her future. They kissed, soft and sure, the choir erupting into a joyous crescendo. Ethan threw his arms around them, and the crowd cheered, the sound echoing through the cathedral's ancient walls. The reception was held in the cathedral's courtyard, a lush oasis of magnolia trees and fairy lights. Tables were laden with New Orleans classics, jambalaya, crawfish étouffée, and beignets dusted with powdered sugar. A jazz band played a lively rendition of "When the Saints Go Marching In," and guests danced under the stars, their laughter mingling with the hum of cicadas. Sarai moved through the crowd, her hand in Henry's, feeling like she was floating. Jasmine, her sister, approached, her braids adorned with tiny flowers, her eyes clear and bright. She'd been out of rehab for months, her jazz career slowly rebuilding. "You did it, Sarai," she said, pulling her into a hug. "You're glowing. You're not doing so bad yourself," Sarai said, squeezing her tight. "You sang At Last, like Etta James herself." Jasmine grinned, wiping a tear. "Had to make you proud, big sis." Mrs. Delphine, in a vibrant purple dress, joined them, her gray braids swaying as she danced in place. "Told you, child," she said, winking at Sarai. "You belong wherever you choose to stand." Sarai laughed, her heart swelling. Margaret approached, her pearls gleaming, her expression stiff but civil. "You make my grandson happy," she said, her voice clipped. "That's enough for me." It wasn't love, but it was progress. Sarai nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Laurent." As Margaret walked away, Ethan ran up, his bow tie askew, powdered sugar on his cheeks. "Sarai, you're my mom now, right?" he asked, his eyes wide. She knelt, tears pricking her eyes. "Forever, buddy. You're stuck with me." He hugged her, his small arms fierce. "Good, 'cause you make the best gumbo." Henry laughed, scooping Ethan up. "You're gonna make me jealous, kid." The band shifted to a slow, sultry number, and Henry pulled Sarai onto the dance floor. His hands settled on her waist, her arms looping around his neck. The world faded, the guests, the music, the past, until it was just them, swaying under the stars. "You're my home, Sarai," he murmured, his lips brushing her ear. "And you're mine," she whispered, her fingers tracing the back of his neck. That night, in their suite at the Ritz-Carlton, New Orleans, the air was thick with anticipation. The room was a haven of luxury, silk drapes, a four-poster bed, and a balcony overlooking the French Quarter's twinkling lights. Sarai stood by the mirror, her wedding dress replaced by a cream silk nightgown that clung to her curves, its neckline daringly low. Her curls spilled over her shoulders, and her skin glowed under the soft lamplight. Henry stepped out of the bathroom, his tuxedo gone, replaced by a loose white shirt and black pants. His eyes darkened as he saw her, a slow smile spreading across his face. "You're trying to kill me, aren't you?" he said, his voice a low growl. She laughed, stepping closer, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet. "Maybe just a little." He closed the distance, his hands finding her hips, pulling her against him. "You're beautiful, Sarai. Always have been." Her breath hitched as his fingers traced the curve of her spine, the silk nightgown a whisper between them. She tilted her head, meeting his gaze, her eyes burning with love and desire. "You're not so bad yourself, Mr. Millionaire." He kissed her, slow at first, then deeper, hungrier, his hands roaming her back, her waist, her thighs. She melted into him, her nails grazing his chest, a soft moan escaping her lips. The world narrowed to the heat of his skin, the rhythm of their breaths, the way their bodies fit like they were made for each other. They stumbled toward the bed, the silk sheets cool against their skin, the city's jazz drifting through the open balcony doors. His shirt fell away, revealing the lean muscle beneath, and Sarai's nightgown slipped to the floor, leaving her bare under his gaze. "God, Sarai," he whispered, his voice reverent, his hands worshipping every inch of her. She pulled him closer, her lips finding his, their bodies intertwining in a dance of love and need. The room filled with the sound of their breaths, the rustle of sheets, the distant saxophone weaving a melody that matched their rhythm. As they moved together, the world outside ceased to exist. No gossip, no judgment, no past. There was only them, their love, a fire that burned away every doubt. When they finally stilled, tangled in each other's arms, the moonlight painted their skin in silver, the jazz fading into silence. "I love you," Henry murmured, his lips brushing her forehead. "I love you too," she said, her voice soft, her heart full. A year later, Sarai and Henry sat on the balcony of their new home near the French Quarter, a cozy two-story with wrought iron railings and a garden bursting with hibiscus. The air smelled of cornbread baking in the kitchen, and the street below hummed with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages and the wail of a street performer's trumpet. Ethan, now 7, slept inside, his latest drawing, a family of 4, pinned to the fridge. Sarai's hand rested on her belly, where their new baby, due in 3 months, stirred gently. Henry reached for her hand, his wedding band glinting. "You ever think about that wallet?" he asked, his voice teasing. She laughed, leaning against him. "That Tom Ford thing changed my whole life." "Not the wallet," he said, kissing her temple. You changed everything, Sarai." She smiled, her eyes tracing the stars above. The gossip blogs had moved on. Vivian had faded into obscurity, and Margaret, though still distant, sent Ethan birthday gifts. Jasmine was singing again, her jazz gigs drawing crowds in the quarter. Darius had kept his distance, but Sarai heard he'd opened a community center in the lower 9th Ward, a quiet tribute to her. Their new life wasn't perfect. Sarai was studying to become a teacher, balancing late-night classes with Ethan's school plays. Henry had shifted his company's focus to affordable housing, inspired by Sarai's past, but it meant long hours and tough battles with investors. Yet every challenge felt surmountable with him by her side. Ethan's voice broke the quiet, sleepy and indignant from the doorway. "Mom, Dad, you're supposed to read me a story." Sarai laughed, standing. "Duty calls, huh?" Henry pulled her back for a quick kiss. "We got this." Inside, they tucked Ethan in, his room a riot of crayon drawings and toy rockets. As Sarai read "Goodnight Moon," Ethan yawned, his eyes drooping. "Mom," he mumbled, "you're the best, even better than Gumbo." She kissed his forehead, tears pricking her eyes. "Love you, kiddo." Later, back on the balcony, Sarai leaned against Henry, the city's heartbeat syncing with her own. The Tom Ford wallet was a distant memory, a sleek spark that had ignited a love stronger than any storm. She'd returned it for honesty, but she'd found something greater: family, purpose, a home. "You think we'll make it?" she asked, her voice soft. Henry's arm tightened around her. "We already have." What did you think of Sarai and Henry's journey? That Tom Ford wallet sparked a love story that defied every odd. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your favorite moment, and hit that subscribe button to catch more heart-pounding stories like this. Ring the bell so you don't miss a thing.